best started.
Say again?
Okay, meeting will come to order. Is there any public comment?
I have a comment.
Hello.
We're just starting.
Hello?
We're just starting, Patricia.
Okay, well, I can hear you perfectly at the moment, please.
Yes.
So I just wanted to give you an update on the building. We had a meeting yesterday with Fred Hayes and Don Matthews and Brian Gale. Don Matthews had planned to start digging this weekend. Unfortunately, Fred Hayes hadn't ordered the post yet, and they have to go in at the same time. I guess the cement is this poured into the cement. And they didn't want to leave a hole open, so it's going to be, he said, probably 4 weeks before they come in. We're going to have another meeting next week, I believe.
It's really good news, there's some good movement going on.
Excuse me, what she said? It's good to hear. Oh, yeah, it's definitely going up this year. I mean, everything is lined up. The permits are signed, and the plans are stamped, and the only thing holding us back now is getting the material on site and start digging. Definitely will be going on.
I'm good to have you on that.
Any other public comment? Yes, Joe.
I got a question. Are those wooden posts again?
Yes,
And you gonna put them in cement?
yes, they're pressure treated.
Okay,
They
I
go
got
into a box, which the cement is poured around, and then the box actually stays there, but there's not any structural purpose for it. So even if that part rots away, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I was wondering, because it leans on cement.
Folks, if you'd like to come and sit at the table, you seem to have a small audience tonight.
We're shimmy up closer.
Be better for the remote communication to pull outside of your table.
Any other public comments? Okay, before we start, I would just like to note the passing of our neighbor Richard Condon, sadly, and also Linda Smith, who wasn't a resident of town, but she was the secretary for the Health Commission, and also Ryan Gauthier, who passed away as a result of the ATV accident, also not from town.
Both of those are pretty shocking.
Yes. Okay.
And I understand the guy from Gill who had the ATV accident had a couple of very small boys,
Yes. That's
which
right.
makes it even sadder.
Okay, shall we start with fire department articles?
Did you need your paper
You have my paper, yes. So, I got,
So
I'm not sure.
we're talking articles. You got 12.3 and 25K. Those are the articles. What I think I see in your hand is your budget.
Right, well, these were to go in that, article, weren't they, or no?
Right. So we are talking about
Yes.
Article
Gave him my paper.
7. So the town borrowed $25,000 to purchase a used fire tanker truck from the town of Northfield.
Okay.
It's written as a tanker?
It's not a tanker?
No,
Why we're
it's
here,
a-
we're at edit
Yeah.
time.
It's an engine.
It's an engine, used fire engine.
Okay. And then the other one was for,
I don't know, talk this one and we'll find the other one.
okay, so, Northfield is getting rid of their engine one. It's a 1,500 gallon pumper, holds 1,000 gallons, seats 5 personnel with SCBA seats. It's been very well kept. In fact, they just ordered a new one for $450,000, and they like the old one better, from what some of the guys told me, because it's just so much easier to run. It's for what? Engine one?
Yeah.
57?
Get the new
Oh,
one.
give us the new one, yeah. Yeah, no, they probably won't do that.
Probably comes with a payment book.
Right, yeah, we don't want that. It's extremely good deal. They brought it over for us to check it out, and, the Deputy Weld said, do whatever you gotta do, but get this truck, and he is our main guy that takes care of all our engines and keeps them up running. And he fell in love with the truck. He said it's really, really in good shape.
That's a plus factor.
Yeah, they kept a great maintenance record on it, and they told me that there's only been 2 small problems since they had the thing. So I believe it's 26,000. Was that right? 26,000 on it.
Mileage?
Yeah,
Something like
I
that.
think.
You can still get parts for it. It's
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a Pierce,
Easily repaired.
which is also Pierce is like top of the line. It's really good stuff.
Did have plenty of power going up, Bobby Hill.
Even loaded.
Which is,
It
Yeah.
walked right up. So,
so,
It's a 2-axle truck? 6-wheel or 10-wheel?
the real, yeah,
don't remember, is it?
I think so,
Yeah,
yeah.
probably. I don't remember actually. So.
And Roland checked it out for rust, that would be my concern.
Roland looked it over pretty well, and he was real happy with the way it looked and ran. And
So you're gonna borrow it for the day of the, park it out front so people can walk by and see it?
Sure.
when they come
That
in?
would be a good
They
idea.
would,
if we could.
I think they would be willing to bring it down here, actually.
Either that or pictures or,
Yeah.
And nothing's a done deal with them
Right,
at this point either, because they've still gotta get delivery of their truck and. the
Yeah,
town
and
has-
they won't have their truck till August, I believe. And he said he was gonna keep it in service until September, when they had time to train on the new truck.
Yeah.
okay, so when would we get it
We're
the
looking
earliest?
at September to receive it, if it goes through. Northfield, administrator, Craig, right? The administrator.
Brian Noble.
And the fire chief, both were on board with giving it, or selling it to Warwick, because they can still use it as a mutual aid truck, which will help both of us, really. So that's any other questions on the truck?
Sounds
Do we
like
have a sense of anything that's coming off it that we're gonna need to replace to make it a full-fledged truck?
Well,
Or that we can't transfer from?
there's not gonna be a lot, because most everything on engine one, which will be coming out of service, we'll be able to put on that truck. So, I'm not foreseeing a large expenditure to get the truck in service.
So I'm recommending this, and I'm proposing that it be a borrowing article. It'll cost our taxpayers 10 cents on the tax rate for 3 years, and we're done.
Right.
I think what's gonna be critical to passing it, or at least make it much or sledding, is if folks actually see some progress up there by
Yeah,
town meeting.
yeah,
Yeah.
again,
So
things
be
don't
be
happen.
prepared to answer that question of, like, where are we gonna put it?
Right, yeah. We're gonna put in a new station.
I tried my hand at arguing the price down. I had some difficulty keeping a straight face, but I tried, and they seem to be set on 25, and by anybody's measure, it's a fair price. Fire trucks don't hold their value in the resale market very much, but when you got one that you know the history, you know, if you had a deficient vehicle, you would not want to sell it to your next door neighbor at any price.
Right.
Especially when your next door neighbor comes and guards your fire station during critical times, or comes to your fires and helps you out. So I think it does seem to be like a friendly deal, and it goes along with your next article in setting us up for a better response both locally
Right.
and for mutual aid. So.
Okay, so your other article is Article 16, and you'll note that I have for the first time not only grouped articles, like articles, so that borrowing articles separate from revenue articles, separate from cap stabilization, I've actually captioned them as such. So, Article 16, I'm proposing as a stabilization article. So we lead off with the $25,000 contribution to stabilization, and then we've got a number of relatively small articles to spend out of. And Article 16, Ron, is the,
Okay, there it is.
this one I moved forward from a request made a year ago that we asked you to sit on.
Correct.
So here we are.
So, this is going to buy us a portable pump and other supplies that we need to get the tanker that we received from the state for free. We can use the truck right now, which as soon as we get the fuel line changed over, but it only has the capability to dump out. We'd have to have another truck there to fill it. This pump is gonna take the place of another truck, so we don't have to have two trucks sitting. It's a large amount of water. Between this truck and the other trucks, we have, what we need to put out, at the initial fire attack. Big benefit, because right now, I mean, we're lucky to have 2,000 gallons of water, which honestly isn't gonna do anything. With this tanker, being able to self-fill itself, and the other engine pumping for us, it's gonna put us in a much better position. We tried to, like David said, we tried to set this up last year. This is the same price, $12,300 for, that we got from them last year. It may go over a little, of course, because of inflation or whatever, but that's pretty close. I mean, I'm sure we'll be able to outfit that truck and get it serviceable to where we need it.
So
You said your capacity is currently 2,000, and it will be what? with this truck?
Well, this truck has 28,000 on it.
28, no.
I mean, 2,800, and
So
the
you're
other
at
truck's
3,800. You're,
1,000, and then we got engine two's 1,100, so,
yeah.
yeah.
So you're, if you're talking about three engines, you're going 1,100, 1,000's 2,100, and 2850, you're talking about just shy of 5,000.
Yeah.
And that's just, my thinking is you're probably gonna be responding with, 2 trucks initially, and, then you might run into a problem with getting manpower for the 3rd truck.
Yeah.
So it gives you, the 1,000-gallon, a real good strong pumper, and then you're following in with a 2,800-gallon tanker, dumping the water and going for more while that critical time for manpower to get there is happening. And on scene, you've got, just shy of 4,000 gallons, with, probably 3-4 people, which is unfortunately, a reality sometimes when you're in town. It's gonna take, a little while for people to get there, for you to get other resources set up. It takes a little while, to get, a dump site or a fill site established and a dump site established, and then start trucks moving water. So the more you can get on site right away, the more likely you are to be successful.
So the trucks we're talking about responding with are the Article 6 truck, the 2,800 gallon Pierce.
No, the Pierce
I'm
is
sorry,
1,000.
1,000 gallon Pierce.
Yeah.
2,800 gallon
Tanker.
Tanker is
Yeah.
what we're talking about here. And the 3rd truck would be the GMC?
At this
I don't know
point.
what
At
truck
this
5
point.
is, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, engine 5's being worked on right now, which is probably gonna replace engine 2. I'm not sure what we're gonna.
Engine 2 is,
And
Yeah,
the GMC.
the GMC,
And that's
yeah,
the one that smokes very heavy, and, you're right, it does calm down some, if you've run it for a little while, because I ran it for, a little while, and it was much less noticeable, so a good long trip, and some fuel injector cleaner might be, wonderful, but right now, it's a health hazard to be in the vicinity of that thing. It just
Yeah.
smokes unbelievable. It's all, unburned diesel.
Are you working on any
So-
sort of future plan to say we're working towards Article 16 and Article 7, and 5 years from now we need this, and that'll get us to our capability with all the equipment and the number of bodies you need, and it's gonna cost this much? Are you eventually working on something like that so
Yeah,
everyone can
Yeah.
understand?
grants are probably gonna be a bigger part of the puzzle, later on when we start getting established in the new station. And, I've done a little bit. And we may actually end up, getting a brand new tanker, but that doesn't look like it's necessarily gonna happen, and you go with what you've got in front of you. If,
It's a chance that.
and if that did happen, the town would have a 5% match on that. It's, a $372,000 grant application through, the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, and the town's portion of it would be just shy of $17,000. And I got some feedback from, the FEMA, executive that looked at my application, and he said, due to the nature of, the amount of calls we get in this town, that it more than likely wouldn't happen this year. But, we both went to a grant writing, seminar, and, once we get together a little bit more, there'll be things like AEDs and other things that will take off the town's budget and get, grants hopefully.
A lot of this stuff can be covered by, the things that we need, that we have to have, can be covered by those grants. It's just finding the grants and getting the paperwork in. But we have been working on it. Hopefully we'll get a little more comfortable with it, so we can
Right, 'cause
keep sending them in.
It sounds like you're making progress.
Yes, yeah.
Would it be accurate to say that between the Northfield truck and the Mack tanker and the all-wheel drive attack pumper, is that what that is? That we would stop being deficient?
Yes,
In a lot of areas, I
Yeah.
mean, there are a couple other things that we've, kind of decided that would be good to have, and we've started talking amongst ourselves with the rescue, last month, and, a good rescue vehicle would be, an idea in the future, but at this point in time, a number of us have, I've got a new ATV, Ron's got an ATV, the people have snowmobiles, so we're gonna try and get together and just figure out, what we
What's
have,
available.
between, some of the volunteers and maybe we, at this point, we can, not run into that critical situation and not have an immediate local answer to it, because, when time is critical, and, it was just a matter of, 10 minutes earlier, we could have used what Royalston came with, but, another situation wouldn't have been quite so good. So, we do have answers, before we go and spend town's money on anything, and we'll.
the other thing is the old police cruiser, the Tahoe, should be in service for medical calls, which is gonna cut down a lot on running the engines to medical calls, save a lot on gas that way, obviously, that's why it was given to us. We're just waiting on the new lenses to come in for the lights and to get it leaded, and then we'll equip it for medical calls and search and rescue type stuff.
And how are we set for that equipment? You can't be taking it off another truck that's in service, so how are you gonna make it there?
Well, we can use, we have enough to keep, other than the AEDs, which are on my paper here, because technically you're supposed to have an AED in every engine, responding engine. And so we're gonna need, right now, we only have one on engine 2, which is our main engine that we take to medicals. We won't need the medical bag in there, it'll go in the Tahoe. We will need an AED to put in there, though. We have 2 backboards, unfortunately, one of them got lost in the hospital, but we'll get it back, I'm sure. But, so we can still keep the necessities for like MVAs on engine 2 and on the Tahoe.
The backboard issue is continual.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
They keep track of the patient, but the backboard goes missing.
Yeah, it's, and then you go take somebody else's, and then they eventually come back with yours, and this is just how it works.
Okay. Anything else on fire?
Well, so I have a question. I'm not sure if this got put in here, David, because I really don't understand how this, that the 2 AEDs and.
No, I don't think I've seen this before, so I did not.
Did you grab a budget behind that? Where's the budget? There it is, okay. Just look at your,
So, the select board got this?
where's your page?
No, I thought I had dropped them off, but I probably didn't. So is this, can we still put this on the
It's up to my bosses here, but yeah, we've got
budget?
another 6 days to,
Those are things, we really need to replace.
Remind me about radios. There's portables, there's base stations, there's
Mobiles.
mobiles. Which one's the most portable of the whole mess?
Portable.
Portable.
Portables, are they the handhelds?
Yes.
And are the school's looking for us to acquire some. Actually, one, it turns out one additional. Is that the same radio?
No, shouldn't be the same.
The school,
Yeah.
What's that for?
they wouldn't be allowed to,
So they can communicate, perhaps Chief can,
There's a new law that just, it's another unfunded mandate, but every district, every school is now required to have a school resource officer. They're also required to have communications in the school, so each school in this district, and statewide actually, but we're worried about our district, each school has to have a radio. It has to be able to communicate. The way it's being set up through FIRCOG and the Mass Chiefs, or the Franklin County Chiefs, is they're going to be able to communicate with simulcast 1 and 2, and probably a TAC channel. That's required because of the mutual aid that's going to be coming in case there's a...
Right, that makes sense, sure.
So there's going to be a handheld radio at the school. There's going to be one at the fire department, one at the police department. We already have the radios, so that's why David said we're looking for one.
Okay.
So, again, another unfunded mandate from the state. It's, I mean,
so are those the same radios you're talking about?
high band.
Yeah, that would be,
400 something megahertz?
right, 450.
All right, and I priced those, they're about $800. You got them down at what?
Do I have them on there?
For the Motorola's? or-
Oh, right, okay, so this is for, I'm sorry, David, these are for the mobile radios to go in the trucks, which are a little more expensive. So we need one for the tanker.
So these are called portables, not mobiles?
No, these are called mobile.
Portables are the handhelds, that's what the school needs. School needs a
Yeah.
portable, and, before I forget it, highway department might, we used to have Tim, with one, and I know Brian's, but Larry should probably have one.
All right, between now and June 30th, I've got an EMPG grant to spend. I think it's, I have to go to my office, but I think it's around 4,000. I was gonna buy one handheld for the school out of that.
Yeah.
And I think we could amend it to use that EMPG grant to buy these other radios you need. If I can't do that, can I put this on the warrant?
Well, what do you think?
Yeah,
Okay, so we'll try to pay for it with the grant, otherwise,
Unless you pass the deadline, that's a standard, between that and Pages, you should be able to
that's
do
what I'm
that.
thinking, no.
Awesome, that's awesome.
Well, while we're on this subject, Bob Berry said that we should have been approved for that grant from,
That's,
oh, is that the one you're talking
That's-
about?
Yeah.
Oh, so we were, okay.
Yep.
Oh, so- okay. He said he was gonna call you and talk to you.
Yeah,
about
they're
it.
probably getting nervous, because Kathleen just retired, and I got the email that said, make sure you spend the money by June 30th.
Okay.
And I am.
Okay, so, yeah, that was for, one for the tanker, and one for each of the other two trucks that we're gonna be putting in service. Because obviously they can't be put in service without a radio.
what's the total cost of them if he's got a?
5,100.
Oh, so then we still need 11 minus,
Okay.
yeah. So we could get 4,000 of it covered.
Yeah,
If my memory's any good, whatever it is.
Well,
yeah, I think, that sounds right. I think so.
Okay.
Did you give the finance committee a copy of that? Or?
I haven't, I thought I gave everybody a copy, but I probably didn't make it up here for the meeting.
Okay.
But,
So,
This is a copy for me?
I'll make a copy
Okay.
for
You
you.
make some.
Just
Okay,
so you can
Right.
See on the paper.
I may actually have them in my truck.
It's,
So the SCBA masks, they're $240 each. I'm asking for 4 of them. We have a lot of old masks. Obviously, we have a line in for new SCBA tanks that's carrying on each year. That doesn't include the mask. Right now, I'm trying to keep it as low as I can, but I know at least 4 of them are really stretched out, and you can't get a good fit on them. They need to be, you absolutely have to have a good fit on your mask, or it does you no good. So I'm asking to replace 4 of them this year.
Can you tell me why you couldn't come out of the 5,200 equipment and supplies?
Well, when we sat down and figured this out, the officers and I went over the budget together. We know that with the other trucks, we're gonna need more money to keep them up and running. So that's why we raised that.
But that's not equipment and supplies, that's
Oh,
repairs and maintenance.
okay, equipment.
And
I see,
supplies
equipment and
is
supplies,
the
yeah.
line that I would think
Okay.
might be able to take that out.
versus a separate article,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, let's do that. That should work, all right. And then,
And those,
What about that article turnout gear? It says article on here, but I don't see an article in our warrant.
There is no turnout gear article this year.
There isn't 2 or 3.
Right, it says it is.
Right, 2 of
Maybe
them.
it just needs to be zeros.
It
or-
says C article.
Oh, well, that just needs to.
because we don't need
That's fine.
turnout, that's not,
that's carried on every year.
yeah, that's
So
not
that's-
considered turnout gear, the masks.
Oh, right,
It's-
no, that's part of the SCBA.
And then, but, equipment and supplies, why couldn't the AEDs go in that too?
Let me go make
versus a-
some copies of this.
Versus a
Okay,
warrant
sure.
article,
Sorry, I
you know?
didn't bring any.
Just put it in the budget versus doing a separate warrant article for it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is it's not going to be every year that we need to buy 2 AEDs, that's why I figured I'd put it on a budget, line item.
What are you looking at, the Zoll?
Yeah,
They may have a private grant. Have you contacted them?
no,
Sometimes they give you a private grant. I don't know if they're still doing it. I know they were a long while back to get their product out.
Yeah.
So,
I actually did hear that, the next round of, it's called the SAFER grant. The federal grant program has another round of that, and AEDs are fairly high priority on that too. So one of the things I'm thinking, and I don't wanna kinda screw with what you're doing, but, you know, and I do believe it's critical that we get at least
Yeah,
one.
absolutely.
But do you wanna like put it on my, cause it'd be good
For the
practice,
grant.
you know, to get the grant application in for it.
all right.
so.
Yeah, we can go down to 1 and then try and get another one through a grant.
And that way, you know, I'll build
Because we have,
success.
absolutely have to have one on the,
Cause I mean, I'm fairly new to the grant writing process too, so,
yeah.
getting little successes that,
Yes, Chief.
I would actually recommend the town hall have one too.
yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah,
You see them everywhere now. Pretty ridiculous. I'm surprised that we don't have one.
Chief, you said there's gonna be a safety officer at the school?
No, there's a law that says we have
All
to
right,
have a safety.
well, now, I got a little bit of information that, and I know there's an AED there. I'll pose this as a question that I kinda know, an answer to. Is there anybody there that's trained to use it?
I think, well, nurse, like I said, can't see any reason why teachers wouldn't be trained in CPR AED.
I would think that they
I
would
would
have.
think that would be a requirement for the
Yeah.
position, but I'm not sure.
As a teacher, yeah, the nurses are required to train medical response team within the building.
Okay.
And then I know they did a demonstration for all, and trained all the teachers in my building. I don't teach in this building, but I think that's pretty standard.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think it would have.
If you have a connection to the safety officer, can you verify that?
Yes.
There isn't a safety officer.
Okay.
It's a school resource officer.
Okay.
That's what it is, and there isn't one yet, and, but the question was to find out what now?
I just want to make sure that there's enough people that are capable of using the AED that's sitting there.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly, that might even be something we could get together with Ronnie and I, and go down there and maybe we can find out, see what they are. You know, the AED is covered under the Good Samaritan law. If you know, anybody can grab one now, same way that anybody can do CPR, as long as it's not negligent and you're trying to save a life. You know, a civilian can use it. That's why they're, you know, in malls and things like that, so. It would be a good idea, I guess it would be a good idea to find out.
So we will look into that grant too, that,
Yes, we will look into that grant. So we're gonna just ask for one for now, because we absolutely have to have one on
okay.
the rescue.
And would we be doing that
on
through
the squad. We can move it to
the budget?
the
ex-
budget. Yeah. If that works. Move it up to put it in the budget.
So all of these other things, the 3 mobile radios, the SCBA masks, the pump and so forth, and the generator, are these included in your budget?
They're not in my budget, no. Those were separate.
And I think,
Items.
The pump for the new tankers in the warrant article, right?
Right,
So,
yes.
but it seems like there's gonna be a number of those things that are gonna come off the list because of the state grant, EMPG.
So we can take the radios off of that. So we're looking at one AED at $1,700. The SCBA's can be put into that, into the budget. Equipment and supplies.
So out of the 5,200?
Or do you add to that?
Yeah. That should be added into that. Fire department. Okay, 52.
So 6160?
Yes.
And the generator?
Excuse me. So the generator on engine 2 that we've had for years and used it quite often during like the ice storm and obviously other incidences, is Roland tried his best to rebuild it. He said it was gone. There's no rebuilding it. It's quite old anyways, but, so we needed to replace the generator.
So where would that go?
One-time article, or what?
Yes.
David?
No, sorry, this is all, I
I know.
haven't seen this before.
I'm sorry, I thought I had given everybody this paper, I'm sorry.
How much is the generator?
2,000.
What size is it?
It's, remember what size?
Actually, we could get by with like a 5,500.
I don't remember what one.
I think they were looking at a 7,500, but,
No, because it's gotta fit in the truck. You know, the 7,500 wouldn't fit in the truck.
Right. I don't know, I wasn't overly privy on that conversation, other than, I know Joe was talking about the Honda,
Right.
like a 3,000 EU or something,
Yeah, I think that's what
but,
3,000.
and I would, and if we get Northfield's engine one, is that gonna include the generator that they've got on it?
Not sure.
Because
can look into it.
that generator looked to be decent, and I don't wanna,
But you know, when we're replacing the one that we
yeah,
use for
and
like
I would
people's
think,
oxygen tanks, and
again,
the smaller one.
and not just as a firefighter, but as a citizen, I would think that we could do that for, we could do a decent generator for less than that.
Well, that's, I don't know, when we sat down and discussed with the officers, that's what the number they came up with,
Yeah.
what they were looking at. I'm fine if we can find one less than that. I just don't wanna not have enough to replace it, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, Chief.
I just bought a 7,500 from a local electrician for $1,000, so
Oh,
electric start, got a battery trickle charger on it, gas.
The Generac, right?
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
I have one
I
too.
don't know what your,
This is at the portable,
this is on wheels, it's horrible.
you
Yeah,
know,
no, it's-
you know the small blue one that we had, the Yamaha, that we could carry it like, it's kind of like a one-man carry to, we used it, like for instance, during the ice storm, somebody needed, didn't have a generator and they were on oxygen, so we brought that over and they used that. But, I mean,
I think,
we could cut it down, as long as we can replace it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing, you know?
so what's a reasonable amount?
I would think you could probably still even get a Honda for, 1,400 max, and, this conversation, and I'm trying not to go back and go against, what the thinking of the other some of the other fire department guys were. And you're right, the portability of it and the longevity of it is important. I took a look at the one on Northfield's engine one, and, I really think as a resident, and with the fire department asking for, as much as we're asking for, I think we could probably get something for, $1,200 that would satisfy what we need, with,
How about we put 15?
Okay, let's,
You don't have to spend it all.
right, I know, exactly. Like I was saying, if we can get it for less, I'll certainly
Right.
get it for less, but,
Okay.
But find a model,
I-
and have it to present, talk about how many watts, what you're gonna use it for, why we need it.
Right.
That's important.
Give you the big green ones that you
no, that's
yeah,
not very portable.
So where in the budget are we putting this?
It's a one-time buy, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, generator's an article. We already have the pump article. We're gonna scratch the SCBA masks, move it to the budget. The mobile radios will be net of the grant. There'll be something, but not much. Well, what's the life of an AED?
should be
6
10
years.
years
I'm
at
not
least.
sure, but you get them reprogrammed like every year, right?
Okay, so an article on the AED.
I talked to a lady at the chief's show, and she said that they normally get cycled out every 10 years.
Every 10?
And that's what they're trying to recommend.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people are hanging on to them, and they're still effective. but-
Right.
All right, and an article on the SCBA replacement. In FY15, we voted $2,800. So you're looking for an article for, because I believe we cut that up into 3 pieces?
Those are for tanks,
Four.
not the masks, or?
Right.
Yeah, for
Right.
tanks.
Yeah,
And we agreed, well, we're gonna appropriate the money, we're not gonna spend it until time is up.
Right.
Since replacing stuff that's still good.
exactly.
So the budget overall is up $3,500. So I'll have to make those changes in the requested line. And the only question I have is gasoline, because we got rid of the Louisville truck, and I don't know what you could be burning $2,000 worth of gasoline.
Well,
No.
it's true. I mean, I increased it because of the squad, but I don't think we need that much for, what?
Now, it's gasoline and not gas and diesel?
Diesel,
Diesel
we
we've got
frank
here.
off of the
Right,
highway department.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, I mean, it's
so
just
what are we
small
gonna, what are we running?
Chainsaws, generators,
Yeah.
Well, Mike wants to buy that stupid premix stuff for that, but that's not gonna be much.
It's not
Just-
stupid.
it's
The-
good, I tell you what, it may seem stupid and expensive, but it's good for
Yeah, running.
stuff that
and
doesn't
so
Doesn't
that
get
it-
run a
sits.
lot.
Yeah, so we don't have to worry about starting a chainsaw. I didn't mean to say stupid. It is good.
Yeah, it's $16 a gallon, it
Yeah.
seems stupid.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but you're right, I've had, a chainsaw not start during a critical time, and it was very frustrating.
So you don't need any gas, that's good.
No, we need
oh,
gas.
we still need some,
So-
yeah.
All right, so you're figuring the brush truck and the
So-
rescue, right? Brush truck and the rescue.
2 police
Right.
cruisers and, I don't know how many hours of patrol, and we have 3,500 budgeted on the police side, so I would wonder if you could do it for 1,000.
Probably, I would say so. Let's do that.
Depending on the price of gas, what it does.
True, but
Up and
we
down.
don't let, honestly, I mean, we're gonna be cutting back a lot of fuel, at least diesel, but I mean, a lot when we get that Tahoe in service, because the engine's not gonna be running.
Well, if you could go with that, we do have a reserve fund,
Yeah,
if it turns out to be a bad guess, but
Right.
that's a line I've had my eye on for a while.
Sure, and I mean, as long as it doesn't get to be, like May and
Yeah.
we run out of gas money and, nope.
No, it can't go, we don't have gas.
right, yeah.
And a warrant article for the generator?
Yes, $1,500 warrant.
So, is that it for fire department?
I think we'll be good.
Okay, and would you later in the week double back and check my work, make sure I
Okay,
got
And
things
when
here
you
in
cross
sync?
out,
Sure.
put no money towards the turnout gear, where it says article. that just
I
goes-
actually added it back in.
That-
I think I was supposed to, I think that was my mistake. I
Yeah,
think I was
that-
supposed to
'cause
carry
that's-
that forward.
that's every year we buy 4 sets. 3 sets, 4 sets.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was talking about SCBA replacement. I'm gonna add an article for that. Turnout gear,
Turnout gear, what are we gonna need for turnout gear this year though?
We put it in there for continue to, so that we don't get behind and say, oh, all that gear's out of date again.
So-
So every year we replace another set of gear, and that way, there's a new set of gear if somebody needs one. And in actuality, we need, a lot of people need boots, gloves, and hoods, which is, none of that's new. I mean,
Right.
you have new boots, I do, but
Right.
the other guys don't,
Yeah,
so.
or do you want an article for turnout gear, or you wanna put it in the budget? I can certainly see the argument, putting it in the budget.
It's going to continue.
It's a continuous expense.
I think so.
Yeah.
In the budget. I agree.
I agree.
Can you bump it down to 4?
No.
Yeah, just
That gives
Try to
us,
squeeze it.
that actually gives us 3.5 sets, so we usually end up getting the whole 4 sets and taking it out of the budget.
Okay. That's it then,
Should be good.
okay?
Okay.
General government, including the town clerk.
Well, the town clerk requested a while back to present, so
Actually, it wasn't so much I requested to present as when you had the joint meeting, the finance committee said they wanted everyone to appear before them and justify their budgets. And this is my first budget because I inherited the one that I have this year.
talk to me about the election line item. It seemed to me it should go down by 1,000, not 500.
Because the automark voting machine has to be there. It's part of the Help America Vote Act. It's an accessible voting device must be available for all elections, and it was all federal elections in 2002 when they started it. The state took it further, it has to be all elections as of 2007. So if I don't use it, we can be charged with civil rights violations, we can be taken to court. So it has to be there.
Jeanette and I were
don't know
brave.
if it
We
was
never
in
went
there
to jail.
before, but the, well, you've got about, for the 2 elections last
Now,
fall.
you answered the question. It has to do with that machine.
Most of it, yeah.
Which Jeanette and I ignored that and saved the town.
I wouldn't admit that in public, because we could get in trouble for it, but it's gone
Nobody's
now, but-
ever used the damn thing.
No, I
except
agree,
me.
it is from a budget standpoint.
can't
It is
get
a
in
waste of our
trouble
tax
for what
dollars.
nobody
I
tried
don't
to
argue
use.
that, but they pointed out in elections too, they have people from different groups, they will find out there's an election, they'll just go pop in, they're not voting. If they see that machine isn't there, we can get in trouble. Any voter who sees it's not there and decides to cause trouble can report it, and then the town is on the hook for some ugly things. So that's basically it. This budget, however, does not take into consideration the fact that if the Wired West project is presented at a special town meeting and there's a contingency for an override and it passes, there will have to be a special election. That would be a minimum of 4 hours. And that would require that wonderful machine and then whatever. It's right now it's $70 an hour for election workers to cover everybody that has to be there at $10 an hour for every hour. They are making some changes in 2016. I don't know if it's going to affect the presidential primary. It will affect the presidential election, but it may not affect the primary. If it does, then part of this election budget will not be used because they're going to eliminate the need for people checking. When you go in, you check in, you vote, you check out. They're going to change it where you check in, but you don't have to check out, and that will eliminate the need for 2 workers at that table. But I believe that's not going to be the case until FY17. But if they're not needed, then we don't pay them, and then we get a little extra money. And the training, obviously, is you had a town clerk who was here for 16 years. You now have one that's been here for no less than 11 months. So I took some of that other 500 that came out of the elections, or 300 came out of the elections, I put it in the training. I upped the postage a little because I don't want to be running around asking for stamps from every other office. And anytime somebody registers to vote, changes their registration, or is deleted, a letter for them is generated from that state machine and must be mailed to them. So that's my postage. And printing's all done here. The ballots are done on the copier, why there's 0. I left the 150 in for records management. I'm not sure what's been done. There are some things in the vault that are going to need to be rebound at some point. I don't know anything about cost yet, so I'll look into that sometime in the second year when I've gotten my feet wet a little bit more and gotten everything done. But that is, I'm not looking at spending anything more than 150 for that in FY16 and may not spend any. I have to find out how much things cost, but there are some things in the vault that will need to be looked at. And I actually didn't request a salary bump, but everybody got one in there, so that explains that, pretty much.
You're not going to argue against it this time? on
No,
town floor.
no, but I didn't technically ask for it because I thought we weren't supposed to.
Is there any alternate provision for that stupid machine? I mean, could we hire a bonded home health aide, double secret, sworn to their duty and secrecy to assist
As
the
far
first
as I
resident
know, what I was
that
told
might
is
require that $500
that device has
whack
to be
machine?
there. It depends, the actual cost depends on what's on the ballot. Because they gave me a $602 estimate for this upcoming election, but there's less candidates and no ballot question. So I'm not sure yet. The ballot has been proofed and it's gone in now and it's going to be printed and sent. And I don't know exactly how much it's going to cost for this year. But to the best of my knowledge, having talked to someone in elections, Bridget Simmons, who runs all this stuff, no. You have to have an accessible device, is the way she put it, and apparently Automark is the one everybody uses.
You stop and think about it for a minute, every town in America has to use that thing, every election. There's only one company that makes
The
it.
state pays for everything when it
Well,
has to do with a state or a federal
This
election.
was like buying a Lexmark printer. They'd almost pay you to take it because you pay so much money for the ink cartridge that goes in it. And so they gave us this machine, and then we get torqued for $500, $600 for something that nobody uses. Offends me.
Jeanette said nobody had ever used it.
Nobody's, I did, not to vote with, but for a practice ballot. It's the most idiotic thing I've ever seen. The keyboard is in alphabetical order. If you've ever typed in your life, try that.
Well, I've tested it twice, it does work.
That's my major bit.
I
for
do
the
know of-
computer,
it's-
not in alphabetical.
There is a special screen on that designed for people with macular degeneration. I know we have some voters with that. They've just, so far, they can either see well enough themselves or they prefer to bring someone with them. But this is what I've gotten straight from elections, so I don't know. I'm not comfortable with knowingly violating federal and state law, personally, no. So, I understand from the
Takes a special
taxpayer
kind of person.
standpoint, it's $500, whatever that works out of the tax rate, I'm not sure, but yeah, I appreciate the problem, but
But the guy
I don't know any other way out of it,
The
so.
machine said what, the minimum fine for not
Under
using it
general
was 10
government.
grand?
I know you can get taken to court.
Yeah, that's what he said. But you gotta get caught first.
All right, I suggest we take a quick run through the rest of general government. Anything stand out on the first page to anybody? The only thing that worries me
I
at all
thought
is,
the stipend versus the clerk's salary was odd for the assessors. The clerk's salary seems pretty high, given how low the other is. But
well, compare the town coordinator with the select board. How's that working for you? You're the lowest paid select board in Franklin County. And that was true in 1987 when I was a select board member. You haven't had a raise. Now, the assessor's clerk is a employee who happens to be an assessor, but that is a position. And Wendell funds it as a 20-hour-a-week half-time position. I don't know what they do, but we have it as about 4-hour-a-week Wednesday morning job, and it seems to work. This is a reval year coming up. It wouldn't be the year to make any cuts, that's for sure. Page 2. The reason town council retainer is up is that we changed councils, and I promised new council more money right after he stopped laughing when I told him what we pay. Nobody pays $2,800 a year for council. If we'd have paid more like his retainer, we would get our hourly for court appearances and law cases, which are apart from the retainer, which are not included, where our rate is $160, and if we would basically double the retainer to what his other 10 towns pay him, we'd get him for $100 an hour. I like to minimize the amount of time we spend in court, and so this is what I negotiated I would ask the town meeting for when we changed back in August or September.
I know how it is.
does either of these items cover the pipeline? Because that's been raised.
The line item for reserve for legal would be touched for that most likely. I mean, up to a certain point, questions of counsel around pipeline questions would just happen as part of the retainer. But if we were actually to join with a group of towns in filing a suit or something like that, then
FYI, FERCog has decided to not push the pipeline, to wait and see what happens. So they're not planning to take any action right now, because there is a possibility that it could go through despite everyone's protest. And we had talked about that before. Might as well remain as least antagonistic as possible. So if we have to deal with them, maybe we could get more out of it. So, just.
anyway, Nick, the 5,000 is in there as potential legal contingency.
And you don't think it needs to be increased? I think Ted had raised that issue.
I think between that amount and the reserve fund, given the taxpayer discontent with rising costs, I think we should, if a really big deal came up and people were passionate about it, we could have a special town meeting, and you know, at certain points of the year we have free cash has been certified, and that could be appropriated to the use, or the tax rate isn't set until, so there's I mean, our accountant should, by the book, have our free cash certified by the time our tax rate's being set. So perhaps that's the place to apply a little pressures. That would either give us the ability to have a special town meeting, because the tax rate hasn't been set yet, and the town says, yeah, we want to spend money, or after the tax rate's been set, very shortly, free cash is certified, and we have until June 30th to act on it. Our habit is to vote it to reduce the levy at annual town meeting. But if a big deal came up, that's where we could fund it.
Okay.
I took computer maintenance and repair down $500. Just computers are so dirt cheap, and we're in pretty good shape. When the $3,000 budget that was online, when that was established in the 1990s, that's about the cost of one computer. Today, $2,000 will, I don't know how many computers that'll buy, but
Yeah.
certainly more than one. So that seemed reasonable to take down. The new copier costs a tad more than $1,200, but I've got broadband making a payment or two, because we use it too. It's also a printer.
And the supplies zero is because the supplies are on another page?
No, it's because I take them out of inter-office expense, and the supplies amount to paper at $36 a case of 5,000 sheets, and toner is $30 for, I don't know, we use a cartridge every 3 or 4 months, so it's just not,
Okay.
it's buried into, we used to, the legacy here is that we used to have a copier that, at least, that counted how many pages we used, and we had to pay for any overage. So we used to take the big jobs like town report, town meeting copies, anything that was heavy redundant use, we'd take it outside of us. But now for $108 a month, it's the cost of paper, toner, and electricity. And page 3. The shading on FERCog was just my attempt to make sure I had the current numbers, and I do. I could take that shading off.
Okay.
So page 4, public safety. Total police budget's down $4,700.
I note that we don't have any increase in the police salaries. And as I recall, at the last meeting, the increase was to bring them up to date, up to standard.
So, you want me to add the 1.5% to
What do
this?
you all think? I mean, it wouldn't add more than, I think I figured out $500-something for the salary. And I don't think they should be penalized for just being brought up to date. Nick, what do you think?
So how much is that gonna cost?
I think, 536, 536. What do you think, Rick?
That's okay.
I'm sure we can afford it.
Yeah,
I know there was some pushback at the last joint meeting,
I know, but
so.
we have a good crew, and I think we should treat everyone
oh,
equally,
I-
and
agree.
especially to recognize, we've had some serious incidents, and the police and fire have been exceptional.
What line are you referring to?
165.
Okay, thanks.
Any opposition there?
It makes sense to me. We adjusted the budget last year to make up for some deficiencies. If they stop tracking with everybody else, we'll back our way into that
Yeah.
situation again.
Yeah.
And the total is still going to be down, so.
Right. Okay.
The building department, the issue was raised about turning it over to the county completely. Generally, I'm against that, but it's a substantial savings. If you had any thoughts on that?
One, I don't know whether the COGS got the capacity. I know when I started talking to them, they were gearing up, figuring out how to do it. I think there's some unfortunate tone deafness at the building department who are not very well plugged into Warwick and asked me for $1,500 in increases in their budget this year in the face of this discussion. Phil's a friend of mine, I like him, he's a decent building inspector, but I'd still go with the COG.
Okay, my preference is to keep it in the town, except that there was a very substantial decrease discussed. It seems to me that if the FERCog doesn't know whether they can take it on, that answers.
Well, this is me, I just know that they run a tight ship and they don't necessarily have capacity laying around.
Right.
So what I have done here is change the caption on line 220, which used to read building inspector, and now it reads building inspection. And I did that because when I went to legal counsel to say, can I take the assistant building inspector's pay out of this line? He said, not the way you wrote it. It says building inspector. So I changed it to building inspection, which means that we could go with FERCog we could pay the assistant out of it. We now have some latitude.
Good thinking.
How does the item that says, everything out of fees for the, plumbing inspector and the wiring inspector, how does that work? Do they, don't they collect fees, hand the money over to the town and then the town pays them back?
Right, that's Article 4, which are Article 4A through whatever, are all our revolving accounts, and K is the electrical inspector, and someplace buried in there is the
Plumbing and
gas is D.
Yeah.
So they do the work, they collect the fee, they turn over the money, and then they put in to get the
Pay it out
money.
of the revolving fund, and, money that comes out of the revolving fund doesn't need to be appropriated,
Right.
correct?
Right, its maximum annual throughput is stated in the article, so it needs to be authorized.
Got it,
And
okay.
And I believe, raise the fees, the cap by $1,000, because every once in a while we get really close, and it wouldn't pay to top out and have the guy do a legitimate inspection and lack the statutory authority to pay them the money that we got. So I raised a couple of those by about $1,000.
Yes.
Just, why do you put a cap on it, or why don't you just?
The law requires us to put some kind of cap on it.
So why not like 15,000, I mean, you never have to worry.
When would you have, yeah, I guess.
Right?
We're supposed, the town meeting is supposed to be offering a little bit of oversight rather than just. We never hit it before, at any rate, so raising 2,000 to 3,000. The worst inspection fee that we ever paid would have been commercial, say on behalf of broadband on a tower, of $150. The electrical inspection fees, even for a brand new house, are not that high.
Okay, moving along.
Going to page 5, the outgoing tree warden asked me to bring the roadside cleanup, which is basically tree removal that we can't get Verizon or National Grid to do on our behalf. He said that cutting $1,000 would still leave his successor with enough money to get the job done, provided they work closely with basically, almost every road's got wires on it, and almost every roadside tree could impact the wires, so.
Okay,
Does there have to be anything for emergency management explaining what it's going to be used for?
It's never been touched under our current emergency manager, so it's basically an appropriation to next year's free cash. But I felt whereas a line item like American for Disabilities Coordinator is part of my job description, I don't want to be the emergency management director for $100, so we leave it in there.
Just the note that there's some money that goes to the emergency manager from Vermont Yankee.
15.
That's actually gonna be kind of drying up. So it might be something that the town considers funding in the future.
It's a very small amount, but I sort of would think that there ought to be 100 in the expense line on that one.
The occupant of that office has been there for the 7.5 that I've been here, 7.5 years. If he's not requesting it, I don't think we need to push it on him.
All right.
Okay. Are we on to highway?
We're on to highway.
Why the reduction?
The rest of the highway budget is allocated to Chapter 90,
Oh,
to Chapter 90 work. There's, Chapter 90 work needs to be systematic. We're not gonna be able to, say, shoot, it rained hard last night and, Brian, get in the truck and go check, Chestnut Hill Road for, washout. And then we'll spend the rest of the day dealing with it. That's not Chapter 90 work. But Chestnut Hill Road, a project submitted to the state that says we're going to cut roadside brush and work on the drainage and put 3.5 minus riprap in the edge of the road, and we're going to replace this culvert and this culvert, and we're going to grade it, and we're going to re-gravel it, is an eligible Chapter 90 expense. And after buying this new payloader for net to us $135,000, we still have over $500,000 of Chapter 90 highway money available to expend. And so local aid for schools, unrestricted local aid, payment in lieu of taxes, none of those revenue sources from outside of our tax-paying public are going up. But this highway piece has had $170,000 this year alone added to boot. So our highway department worked along these lines on the first pothole grant, which was largely expended in this fiscal year. We've got another pothole grant that needs to be expended, $34,000. You signed it last week's meeting. So this is my way to supplant a certain amount of highway spending where it's legal with a grant source. And I'm a little concerned that the next thing that happens is they start looking at the balance and saying, you haven't spent it. You must not need any next year.
yeah.
So Larry came to me today and said, he really wanted to pave a section of Northfield Road with the pothole grant. I said, no way. That is the softest money the state's gonna give us for highways. You can paint lines with it. You can fix guardrails. You can fill potholes. You can correct problems as a result of a tough winter with that money. Forget about it. You want to pave Northfield Road, go to the straight Chapter 90 money. But for a change, all the prep work, working the sides of the road, working the drainage, marking it, laying it out, all the time associated with bringing that pavement project to bear, we get to charge for our guys' time. It's a legal expense.
Yeah.
So that's where that savings is coming from.
Okay, thank you.
So basically, all of these reductions are
Sources.
Chapter 90.
Right, they're made up for in Chapter 90.
And it's about 113,000 still,
Yes.
and it helps offset the snow and ice, other things.
Snow removal has a budget coming on identical to this year's?
Yeah. It's snow and ice removal is the only line item I can think of that we are allowed to deficit spend, and you are never allowed to deficit spend if you cut it. So cutting it is not possible, and the corollary of you can't cut it or you can't deficit spend for snow and ice is most communities feel, therefore do not increase it, because you'll never get to take it to make it less.
Got it.
Now, in the Department of Fiscal Responsibility, the legislature and the governor signed a bill that we can take the snow and ice deficit, and ours is, in fact, before we
66.
make some, well, it's really closer to 80,000. But between the first pothole grant and the now pothole grant, I anticipate we are going to be able to apply unexpended other highway budget amounts to snow and ice and take it down to the 68,000 that I've got in here. I don't believe that this winter was a terrible outlier compared to what's going to come next year or the year after or the year after. If you do think that, then you should argue that, oh, we should amortize the cost of this year's snow and ice removal over the next 3 years. I rather think not.
I don't see any reason to do that generally. I mean, if we can pay for it, we can pay for it.
Well, you know, Worcester got 116 inches of snow, and they're probably still digging out. So the thought was for communities that really got something untoward, that they be allowed to do this. I think it's going to have a pretty good potential to bite them in the long run. It's like taking out a loan to pay for your groceries and then eating your groceries this week.
On whether amortizing it doesn't make sense.
Okay, then. Debt service.
You'll notice that, I hope, to minimize confusion, transfer station and broadband enterprise fund, the two enterprise funds are just out of the budget. They're revenue neutral, no revenue shown, no expenses shown. 3 articles related to them at the town meeting, but not within the omnibus budget, which in a sense had us acting twice, because the moderator would always mention it and it would go through. Line 335. In my history here, we've mostly not budgeted anything, and we've mostly been lucky and not had veterans benefits. We do have veterans receiving benefits, and I've budgeted for the current level. Do know that 75% of the cost of the veterans benefits is reimbursed by the state at some day, year in the future. So it comes back, 75% of it comes back to us. If our actual history is that the 6,000 is not enough, we'd have to go to the reserve fund, and have in the past. It became so ordinary to go to the reserve fund for this that it made sense to budget for it, eventually. Page 8.
What is and is not paid for by the town with the library? This confused me that it was sitting here, because I sort of thought the whole thing was out of a separate pot.
No, we always appropriate
all
to the
this.
operation of the library. There used to be some cockamamie thing where some portion of the dog license fees collected in the state supported the library. And so there would be $1,000 or something library state aid, but that went away several years ago. The library does have a number of trust funds, and depending on the terms of the bequest, so most of them they can spend the interest, and the interest lately hasn't been very significant. And some of them are bequests that they can spend the whole thing. So they definitely augment their budget, particularly adding to the collection with non-tax supported money. And in fact, that's why materials, books, is such a minor amount, because I can tell you that they buy more books and magazines and videos and CDs than this budget reflects.
Why is it highlighted like that in the library?
just for me, I'll make it go away. I can't even tell you what underlying color it is, but it meant something to me at some point.
Okay, we're down to education.
Yeah, we're down to education.
I was surprised to see there weren't any new members.
Actually, there are new numbers.
Okay.
It's like,
Oh, what the heck? Yeah, you're surprised, and I am too. The number should be about $10,000 less in the requested amount.
That was in the paper, right?
Yeah, I must have two spreadsheets going, this is fun. So that amount should be 801,085.
Say that again.
that's what you emailed out was that number.
Yeah, I don't know,
801.
Is that please?
801,085.
Yeah.
That's in the line 382.
On the email one, not the one that's handed out today.
Well, I'm looking at right here, line 382.
Is yours the same?
How is it the same number when it has come
Right, the
down
ones
from
that handed out, it's a different
9.3
number. The one they
to
emailed is
7.8?
still good.
I'm totally confused, Nick, I have no idea what I'm looking at. I may have picked up, so how many people have 801 in their spreadsheet?
So the 811 is what we got the last time we all met.
Yeah,
And it's on the table tonight.
And on this table. But the email that you sent out the other day
Okay.
had the 801.
Well, the 801 was in the prior,
no, 811 was in the prior.
it was not?
It was.
811 was in the prior. 801 is the result of last
Is
Tuesday.
that
last-
the difference between 9.3 and 7.8?
Apparently.
9.3 and 7.8 is 1.5%, and I think that would be more than 10,000.
David, didn't your email say it was a 4% increase for the town and the service was 2.5%? So obviously it's a lot less than what it was in the previous.
It's not a lot less. It's,
Less.
it was slightly, the budget adopted by the school committee was almost a 1% increase, but something less. And it was an average assessment increase to the towns of 2.5%, but it doesn't, due to the apportionment calculation of minimum contribution and all the rest, it doesn't hit each member town the same.
So we're expecting the 7.8 at this point,
Well, that
based
is,
on the 801.
that is the 801,085 is the school committee's request.
Yes.
And I heard from the chairman of the Bernardson Selectmen tonight reacting to the story in the recorder that quotes me accurately saying that for Warwick to oppose the Pioneer assessment, we'd need company. He said, you know, you'd have it. And the Bernardson Finance, or the Bernardson Select Board are, what did you take away from that conversation, Don?
That we don't have to stand alone. And he's willing to.
It's the back of the envelope calculations where he said that they would, in order to, that they would be looking to cut 57,000 out of their allocation. I'd have to go back to the spreadsheet to figure out what we would, where we would need to be to have the numbers line up, but it's, I did a calculation that said if we wanted no assessment increase, the Pioneer budget would need to be cut $300,000. And there's nobody on the school committee that's interested in that. in a $300,000.
Well, what really matters here is that there be 2 votes and not 1 for rejecting the assessment. And that's probably more political than the numbers, but it matters that we get Berners.
When's their,
And if they're being assessed 4 point something increase and they're asking a 2 point something increase, I don't see how it's ever going to come down as far as they're talking. So it seems to me, if they stick with the 2 point something, then they can tell the voters in good faith reject it. And then we have 2 votes.
when is their town meeting?
After ours.
I'm sorry?
It is after hours. It is, I think, the 16th of May or something like that.
What line item technically are we asking the voters not to vote for here?
We would be asking for 382, the Pioneer Assessment.
So it is just the line item 382? I can't read it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the bond debt wouldn't change, the technology capital project wouldn't change, the Franklin County Tech wouldn't change. Having ground through this budget process and attended just about every meeting, I'm comfortable with this proposal. And half of the reason I'm comfortable is we have, by using Chapter 90 money, kept things from continuing to go up. Know that any more cuts to the Pioneer budget are going to translate into layoffs and closing classrooms.
Well, but they can't keep turning over loss of money from the state to us.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I really feel like everything I was saying was not initially welcomed, but it was heard, and the fact that after no budget increases for a number of years and then some makeup last year, that this year they kept the total budget increases at something, not much, but something under 1%. Was a feat, and we hired a new superintendent who is not costing us more money. Everybody said that would be impossible. I'd like to give the new superintendent a chance.
I agree.
Can I ask a question of Nick?
Yes,
Well,
Well,
you wanted to,
he's not done talking to David, I think. There's no-
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Nick?
I'm sorry.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So, are you mostly wanting to make a statement to the state that the mandated amount of cost per pupil not just keep going up without some explanation? Is that your purpose in trying to challenge the, because it seemed to me that that's where the increase was coming from, was in the recalculation of, that the state was making.
Well, where I'm coming from is that there's been a lot of loss of money from the state.
A lot of lawsuit money?
Loss of money from the state.
I think no growth is closer to the truth. There's just been no growth.
And then in this year, they upped the transportation level again, it said in the paper? Is that true? true?
Yes. And to understand that increase, it does not apply to late buses, does not, it doesn't apply to a lot of transportation expenses.
So something was offered, but it
Something
doesn't
was.
really solve the problem.
Well, their chart that they presented to us seemed like it was a lot worse than no growth. Very substantial cuts, and they take those very substantial cuts and they say, we can't do anything about this, let's have the towns pay for it. And unless we give them a message that we can get the votes to say no, they'll continue.
But I'm saying, that's who you're trying to make an impression with, is the state, right?
I'm sorry?
You're trying to make an impression on the state about unfunded mandates in the school budget?
No, I'm trying to make an impression on the school district that it's got to find a different way of dealing with cuts from the state than shifting the burden to us.
You're passing a ball back and forth. What are they supposed to do?
Well, ultimately, it's the state, I agree.
Yeah.
But if we vote no, the pressure goes on the school committee, not on the state. So, and they're going, that puts more pressure on them to insist on state mandates being paid. So you're right.
Why don't you team up with the school committee instead of pitching yourselves against each other, and both of you go to the state and say, how can we solve this problem? Don't be each other's enemies. The kids are caught in the middle of that crossfire, and that's not a good idea.
David, do you think we would be able to go with them to the state? We've never really tried it, but
It's you're in common cause.
I mean, I agree with you in principle, it's a common cause, but if it's a common cause, then they can't keep shifting costs onto the towns.
They do. They always do.
Yes, but then it's not a common cause, is it?
The school is the town is the school, these are our kids, I don't know, I think you're poking at the wrong place.
Well, the state's probably not going to all of a sudden be generous again.
I think the
So-
state finds money for things that people put pressure on them to find money for, and it has always been true.
We have invited representatively to our town meeting. Have we
I
had a
want you to invite Rosenberg. Susanna Lee is like brand new and probably doesn't know what she's doing.
well, only
We
because,
have the Senate president is a representative from our town.
He's got the correct-
David, I want to ask a question here. It seems to me
This has a correct number in it.
Oh, great.
that we voted a policy very specifically that we were going to tell the voters to vote no if there was any increase. And it seems to me we're backing off of that policy. So are we going to revote it? What are we going to do?
I think.
I thought it was very clear what we did.
The select board took a stand.
Right.
And said, no increase in assessment. I really don't have any way to know if that was a negotiating stance or if that was a bottom line. I'm not on the budget committee, but I went to all but one budget committee meeting. I'm on the school committee. I've been out a lot at night in the last couple of months. And my impression is that we've been heard, and you just need to know that if you take this stance, if you continue with it, it is gonna mean layoffs. And
No, that's not true, because we vote no, and the result is they have to rewrite the budget. And if we vote no again, there have to be layoffs. But the first round is not dispositive of.
if we vote a reduction in the assessment and we are joined by another town, then the school committee is gonna need to rework its budget.
Correct.
If we simply vote the budget down and the other three towns vote it up, we will have a special town meeting to come up with the money that we have to come up with, because it takes 2/3 votes, and in our case with a denominator of 4 is 3/4. And once three towns have passed the budget, that's the budget, and the odd town has to have a special town meeting in order to meet their obligation from the generating the revenue side. 80% of the school's expenses are staff related. So if they don't get the budget that they're proposing, there will be layoffs. If the end result is that if they don't get this, the staffing is the only place that it can come from.
Yes.
Well, but
Madam
they,
Chair, I watched the select board and the coordinator talk for about a year on this topic. And it's interesting to me that I've seen, you coming to a different point. And I guess my question is, if we're at 801, and David thinks that's kind of fair and reasonable, then where would the board think a fair and reasonable number would be if because we do have to pay to educate our kids, and there are a number of people that are in the position of it's worth anything to educate our kids as good as best as possible. If $801,000 isn't that number, is the number 750? Is the number 780? Instead of just out and out rejecting something, because you're going to have a hard time convincing all of the voters that we should reject something without coming up with where a correct number would be.
I think that with 8.5% increase last year, 0 is in fact the correct figure.
And what would the funding number be at 0?
What would the funding number be at 0? It would be 0.
743.
743,095.
Okay, so we're about $55,000 away from that, right?
Well,
Wait, I don't understand that.
Shouldn't we in that calculation recognize that part of the reason that our assessment went up was because we're sending fewer kids to the tech school? That bill went down by $32,000, and the state calculates that we must make a minimum contribution, and they added that and another $9,000 to our minimum contribution. So,
The result of that, if I understood it correctly, was that they were asking to impose a 9.3% increase, and that got reduced to 7.8%. Well, how can we possibly live with a 7.8% increase the year after an 8.5% increase?
because the overall effect on our educational spending, which is more my concern than just picking on Pioneer, is a 4% increase.
So, and I get screwed up with numbers. That $30-something from the technical school, is that kind of, that can go into the Pioneer money? So you're actually only $20-something thousand away from what I would consider to be.
Yeah, we're about $25,000 away
From being
from the net effect of where.
a fair bill for our education costs.
Well, how do you come to that with the net being 7.8%?
Because the tech school assessment went down 25%.
Yes, but that is the difference between their request for a 9.3% increase and a 7.8% increase, if I'm not mistaken.
No. The change from 9 to 7.8 is a result of reducing the budget by $132,000 at last Thursday's meeting.
Well, then 32,000 is going to have very little effect when we're talking 800,000 overall.
No, we're talking about an increase of 50-some thousand. And adding that 32,000 from the tech school brings it down to 20-something thousand.
An increase of 50,000.
So from last year's to this year's at 801, it was 745, you said?
Last year was 743,
743 to 801.
yeah.
Okay, so to zero fund it, you're only talking about $70,000, right? Or 60,000, something like that. There's not much difference from zero funding and this $20,000 for a big fight.
Well, I don't understand which to believe, the 7.8% increase or the 20,000,
Where were you getting 7.8?
because it's what they said.
7.8 is the difference between our assessment last year and the,
What they're asking for this.
so that's 7.8%. It's a 57.9 change, and of that much is due to the change in minimum contribution, which was influenced by that number going down so much.
Yeah,
Not completely. The other thing that influenced it was the state, in their wisdom, decided our corrected equalized valuation is $80 million, not 77. Your house is worth more than you think.
Well,
They sit there at their desk and figure this stuff out very carefully. And that was part of what made the change in Warwick's minimum contribution, the perception that we are wealthier than we let on.
Todd?
how much does the 80 versus 77 account for in the 57,000, I think you said, increase to the
How much
town?
does the 80 what? I'm not tracking that.
The increase in valuation from 77.
Oh, I don't understand that formula, Nick. I don't think there's 3 people in the world that do.
Well, but you just said,
It's part of the mix. I don't know the formula. Nobody's ever
How many
laid it
thousand
out.
dollars equals $1 on the rate, I think he's
Oh.
asking.
Well, the
Well,
federal
it would,
higher education
if our equalized valuation on our books were in fact $80 million, it would mean that $80,000 expended would it be $1 on the tax rate, instead of $77,000. But from a percentage standpoint, that's a fair 77 to 80, expressed as a percentage change is,
It's substantial.
yeah.
Well,
So that, that definitely is in the mix, and there's really nothing we can.
if it were true that the change left over at this point could all be accounted for by the increase in our assessed value, then I would say, okay.
22,000.
The Pioneer assessment to Warwick went up in round figures $60,000. And in round figures, 41,000 of it was a change in the state's calculation of minimum contribution. And so there's 19,000 increase that's not attributable to the state's calculation. $19,000 of increase out of 801,000 is due to budget increases.
Well, what you're saying is that I'm wrong that 7.8 is of any significance.
I agree that that's what I'm saying. I am saying that we need to analyze it in the context of all our education spending, because that's what the state does. I want this back. But this is how, and I've been looking at those for years, so if it takes you a few years, it will not, nothing against you. But the first thing the state does is figure out each community's minimum contribution to education. And I guess allegedly that plus school busing expenses, we could say that's as far as we go and educate our kids from that. So that there's a line for minimum contribution, and that's allocated by the towns, not according to the formula of how many kids you got in school or what the district agreement says, anything of the sort. That is, the Department of Education lays that down. And we divide up our operating expenses. I believe it's based on the 5-year average of enrollment, but it's a function of enrollment. So forever, Warwick's percentage of the Pioneer operating budget was 10%. I missed the fact that last year it went to like 9.8, and now we're at 9.37%. 10 was a lot easier to run around with in my head, figuring stuff out. But what it means, say it is 10. If we want to cut $19,000 from our assessment, that puts the Pioneer budget down $200,000, given that we're 9.37. The Pioneer budget will need to go down that much money. So what I'm most concerned with is the figure at the bottom of the page on line 339, which is our total education expenditures. And 391, yeah. So that, before the cuts the school committee made Thursday night, Warwick's total school expenditure was 5.18. And with the reduction, Warwick's total school expenditures is 4.02%. Bernardston's will, now, on this sheet here, Bernardston's going up 4.51. Berniston's going up $116,000. The chairman of the board, Berniston Selectmen, says they don't want to go up more than 2.5%. So we can discover what the number that Warwick would need to vote in order to support Berniston going up only 2.5%.
Presumably they're proportional around the towns, right?
Yeah, proportional to Berniston is 33% of the budget. Warwick is 9.37. So yeah, it's a math problem. I don't want to do it with an audience, but we can calculate it.
Right. So if they go down from 4.5 to 2.5,
Yeah.
and we're currently at 4.8,
We're
then
at 7.8 on the Pioneer increase. We would go from 7.8 to 4 point something on Pioneer, and then our overall education.
which is not going to happen by them dropping Berniston the amount Berniston wants. Well, it's not right if it's proportional.
It's not 1-to-1 proportional.
I don't mean 1-to-1 in dollars, I mean 1-to-1 so that all the towns
If you take
are
away from
still,
one, you get, there's a set amount.
are still giving the same percentages split amongst each other. If you add up all the towns to 100%, the reductions are proportional on that 100%, right?
You can't do that. If you go from 100% and it's proportional, somebody has to increase.
That's what I'm saying.
We're talking
Can't
about,
reduce all three.
we're talking about
No, that's not-
$19,000 some odd dollars now difference.
I don't know how that
from-
relates to Berniston, but
Right, but in voting for the school's money from Warwick, we've got about $19,000 difference from one scenario to another, and that figures out to how much per household. I don't think it's the biggest problem. I think the overall amount that we spend on schools is high, but
it's about $60 a household.
$60 a household.
Todd,
About
you
$5
had
a
a
month.
question?
It's slowly being answered, he's addressing it right now. The tax rate is obviously the bottom line where the town meeting floor, I think, is going to focus is to, Nick has already made mention of the increase from last year. Everybody's faced that tax increase over the last payment we made. And now it's, everyone's gonna see these numbers and not understand the formulation. Not everyone does, you know, obviously some people do, but as to what the bottom line per household is going to affect, because you had a substantial increase in your tax base already, and where it's going to affect people's personal budgets. And, you know, I agree with education and funding the schools to the best that we can and finding ways to do this, but it's just where the fair compromise is for everyone. Because obviously the unions have had negotiated contracts that have to be honored, and there's certain expenses that have gone up. Pardon me.
It's 8
But it's
o'clock.
just where is it going to affect us as a community, and how the people are gonna react. So to spell this out at town meeting, so it has explanation, you know, where can a school survive without having to lay off numerous personnel? I don't understand every little bit of the budget process because David's been through it, I haven't. Just where is it going to affect us in the long run as a individual household? And still be able to fund the education for the kids here in town. You know, obviously, our budget is not just funding our kids, it's the district-wide. And how these formulations come into play it's pretty complex by the sounds of it. And, you know, it's one of those things that we've got to come to an agreement. We're going to put on the town meeting floor as a recommendation by the board, the finance committee, and people understanding it so it doesn't turn into a long-winded argument.
Stuff and everything, or are you okay for the night, or?
I just think that there needs to be $20,000.
Patricia is trying to say something here.
$32,000 decrease in the the technical school, and an increase of $57,900 to the Pioneer assessment. So, is the tax rate increase based on that $20,000 difference, so to speak, $25,000?
David figured it out at about $5 a month per household, the difference between
So that's-
zero funding and
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Well, 20,000 cannot be 4.8%, can it? No, it can't.
Want me to close the break?
Did you have a comment, Patricia?
No comments at all.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think you've all said everything.
That's good.
What? I think you have said everything that needs to be said.
Well, I guess
Apparently we haven't.
if the,
Pardon?
if
We're
the
still going.
If the select board wanted to recommend a lesser Pioneer assessment, $19,000 to me seems to be the number to net to, after subtracting out, adding in the change of minimum contribution, subtracting the savings over at the tech school. If the select board wanted to say, we don't want our school expenses to go up, that number looks like 37,000. That isn't gonna play even in Bernardston, and we will be having a special town meeting. Because even if it does pass in Warwick, Bernardston isn't going for a cut that's that proportional.
Well,
It's
but-
proportional to that.
The question is whether Bernardston will ask their voters to vote no. It's not a question of whether the result is the same.
I don't
Given
believe
the
Bernardston
rhythm.
is gonna ask their voters to vote no. I believe Bernardston will move an alternate number, a recommended finance committee select board number, rather than vote no.
They can't do that though, right?
We've done it year after year, they've done it year after year. You're right, the law says otherwise. But member towns in this district have taken an affirmative vote on a number. That's not what
And that's the equivalent of a no vote, is it not?
no. A no vote authorizes no dollar amount.
Right, but unless you authorize what the school committee requests, it's the equivalent of a no vote in that it's the equivalent of having to send it back to the school committee, yes?
No, it's not. If the town, basically what's happened in the past is 4 towns have taken an affirmative vote, not necessarily to what was requested. And in the past, the district has done the math and figured out the least common denominator and said, okay, we got a budget approved at this level, and they have then, the school committee has met and eked out a budget to meet that approved amount. In Bernardston, I can't say for Berniston whether they voted no or whether they voted an alternate amount every year. I don't know. But when they are left having authorized an inadequate amount, they have had to follow with a special town meeting. Now, that's not necessarily a problem for us because we have one planned next fall and we could clean things up. We don't set our tax rate until November or December.
Seems to me that if we recommend a different amount than was requested, we then wind up having a vote on that different amount. Is that correct?
Well, what I expect will happen is what happened last year, and that is someone will move the school committee budget amount, and it is I believe my reading of the law, our legal responsibility to act on that number. Having moved that higher number, the way we operate, somebody would typically amend it to a lesser amount, would act on that amendment. The amendment passes, then we act on that motion. The amendment loses, then we act on the original motion.
Well,
but
it
Nick
looks to me like we've done just about all we can do at this point. We have got to discuss it at town meeting.
Well, we're looking for a number to put on the recommended column. This year there's a requested, and that's where the 811 will go. And the question is there going to be a lesser amount recommended?
I move that we recommend $10,000 less.
You mentioned 811, it was really 801 was the number
Yeah, you're right. 811 is the,
previous.
yeah,
Is the
you're right.
requested
801,
amount?
right.
Do we have a second?
With the proviso that we tell the, well, what are you saying is the consequence of doing that
I'm
with the
simply
school?
saying, let's put a different recommended amount from the requested amount and have a good discussion about it at town meeting.
Well, wouldn't it make sense to use the number that will line up with Berniston's number? Berniston wants to reduce their assessment from 4.51% to 2.50. After I've had a night's sleep, I can do the math and figure out what our magic number
If you
would
can
be.
do the math and figure it out, then I alter my motion to fit that, because I think we should recommend the same amount as Berniston.
With the proviso that the recommendation of the board is vote no.
I don't see anything wrong with that, because that will come out in discussion.
Well, Nick, sounds like what you want to do is not put a number that will line up to Berniston's select board's
Well,
thinking,
that's
but just vote
okay.
no.
That's okay if the effect is a no vote. What is the effect on the school board
If
we do that?
If we find the magic number that jives with
Right.
with Berniston, and
Right.
we vote it, and Berniston votes theirs, and Northfield and Leiden vote the higher amount, our number wins. Because you get two higher than us and two at the level that Warwick and Berniston are recommending. So our number passes.
What we can do is
Conceivably,
try to protect ourselves.
Conceivably, the school committee could, they've never before done so, but they could come back, we could meet, and come up with a new higher budget and force the towns that didn't vote the Northfield Leiden number to reconsider that number, but it's never happened before.
Madam Chair?
Could happen.
Did you get a comment from the Finance Committee on,
I'm sitting over here biting my tongue because I can't say anything.
Why?
And I'm not really a committee. My wife's a teacher over there, so I'm not gonna
Oh,
talk in my own interest or against them.
That's a problem.
Plus, I'm a
Let
finance
the
committee of
records
one
reflect
today,
that.
so.
okay,
But even though I can't talk, it'd be nice if there was another school board committee that maybe could put their oar in the water.
Martha's not here tonight, it's too bad.
well, she was on
That's what I
the
was
school
thinking.
If you're a
committee.
committee of one, isn't it true that
I'm not a committee, so now
He doesn't have a quorum.
Right,
I can only talk to what I believe in, and that might influence somebody, so.
so, Dave Shoemaker's on the school committee, following all this. One of the things is, and I know it's not possible, but it's really nice to just be able to say aye sometimes and not have a big dispute over things. And I realize if you're talking about something that's gonna break the bank versus, something else, then you do need to go into battles over it. But I think one of the things you might end up doing is putting a lot of work into this $10,000 less and finding out that it's not gonna be received as that big of a change, and people are just gonna vote with the schools recommended, or the schools requested. Maybe.
Well, I understand that, and
I want us to be as close to getting acceptance at the town meeting as possible. And we need to have this clarified because I think it's confusing even to us. And maybe we should talk to Berniston again and come up with that figure again.
Well, that's what Patricia's
Vanilla drink.
motion is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I get to that number that puts Berniston at 2.5, put that in the recommended line.
Okay.
I just, in the context of this coming town meeting, I am personally far more inclined to get in bed with the support the school at any cost folks, to feign off the rip the lungs out of Warwick town government. And so I'm not cutting the police department and not laying me off in favor of a half-time secretary, not cutting the we're in for a long, nutty town meeting. And I'm gonna be, I think, as a result, making some compromises that are gonna cost me a little bit more money, but so that we don't go over the cliff with a bunch of nutty stuff.
well, all right.
So
Go your way.
That's my change in thinking.
Go it your way.
How about if we, I will come up with that number provisionally, and we ought to be meeting at 5 o'clock, not 6 o'clock next week, because this baby needs to get nailed to the door by 7.
Right.
So I can come up with some contingencies. I just have a sense that, I've said some things repeatedly as a school committee member and as town coordinator with respect to the future of the schools that are really causing some folks some serious heartburn.
8:15.
And I will continue to, and we'll continue to looking at new ways to do things. And most of them are not short-term fixes. And they're not, and there's not very much of a percentage of it that's just posturing or demonstrating that I'm hearing the opposition. I think we do need to look at some fundamental things. GM did, we need to. But this is one of the most important things we do, and standing on the principle of we can't spend any more, I don't think is the place to draw the line. We need to know the implications. And I've been in a position to get a better sense of what that is.
From what you've said, things have started to thaw a bit between our opposition with the school. And I would like to keep that going. So,
All right, I'll go with the arrangement that will bring Warwick into equivalence with Berniston. And do a recommendation based upon that.
Okay. You guys want to vote? I hear a consensus, but you want to go on the record?
Yeah, roll call.
Oh, yeah, roll call vote.
I
think
vote
what are we
aye.
voting on
Lemon.
first of all?
Recommend
That
the
are
same amount as Berniston.
Well,
Recommend an amount consistent with Berniston's 2.5%.
Right. I think we do need a vote because it was clear that there was a different vote last time.
Okay. Was that your motion, Patricia?
It was.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Please, God, no. All in favor?
Aye.
You have to say your name.
Lemon, aye.
Don Maggie, aye.
Nick Archibald, aye.
Okay.
All right, so on to page 9. Page 9, starting at 404, insurance and benefits. Here's where I've been working and we've come up with some savings. While our line 405, contributory insurance, that is our government speak for health insurance. Town pays 75, employees pay 25. Based on our actual premiums paid as of now, this is a good number, and there's a $40,000 savings. Insurance premiums are actually up 4%, but so it's all dependent on the take rate. We have the potential of one employee who's not on our insurance who could come there. That's a potential exposure, but this works, and so that's the number I'm recommending. The only junk number in here right now is on line 415, fire and police accident. We have had a significant claim in the last year, and in fact, in the last 2 or 3 years, both workers' comp and police and fire accident. Police and fire accident is essentially workers' comp for firemen and policemen. They're not covered under workers' comp. That loss history is what's driving this, and our agent is working pretty hard to get a premium number. Our actual expense, even though $4,400 is on the line item, was closer to $4,900. They suggested a 10% increase, but looking at the dollar premium and the amount of losses we're paying, I've slugged in $8,000. I hope that by next week I'll have a calmer number to put in there. There's not much fat in this. I also took the workers' comp audited premium. We pay a deposit premium based on the prior year's payroll. The amount of snow and ice is going to drive that up some, but I looked at the last couple of years, and so we're looking at $13,000 in, actually $41,000 in insurance and benefits savings this year. With that one line 415 hanging out there. I'll have a few fire department articles to bring in here. I will sure appreciate it as soon as I get this stuff done and I circulate it. Please check my work. Last year, the town meeting saved me from the embarrassment of realizing later and not at town meeting that while the budget had a contribution to stabilization in it, I didn't have a warrant article. And the town meeting decided they didn't want the warrant article, unbeknownst to them that I had forgotten the darn thing. So help me out, just go from one to the other and make sure I didn't drop something that won't be helpful.
Okay.
Otherwise, that's the budget. And,
We're still looking at 1975 for the.
well,
tax rate?
I didn't pick up on a bunch of small fire department articles,
Obviously
depending on
not,
how they're
right.
funded.
But it's still less than the 1992 or whatever.
I think that's still potential.
So that's a positive. Even though snow and ice and a few things went up.
I think that is a positive, that people, even the people that have been upset with the tax rate, they're, if you're going down a little bit and still getting all these things so that you can keep your town running and have a community, there's not a lot wrong with that.
Yeah, one thing to note is that this is our final year of payments for capital expenses at Pioneer. So there's 50-something thousand dollars in Pioneer debt service that will go away next year.
That's nice. Maybe just one administrative note, all those highway department items that we have on there as the recommended, are they truly recommended? Or is the the recommended is what was requested now by the highway? If we have two of them on there, people might get into discussion.
The lower amount is what is recommended.
Right.
If we,
But the other number, was that actually
Yeah.
truly requested by the highway?
yeah, that's their level funded budget. I've just allocated it.
Right, but are they truly requesting it?
They truly requested it. They
Okay.
did not have even they didn't have any notion of doing what I've done.
I'm just trying to get ahead of the pushback of, well, why are we gonna take the money away? It's gonna be a big
Well, I
argument. Our roads are
think
gonna go downhill.
What I will do is this 10-page omnibus budget will also get the two enterprise fund budgets, that's a page, and it'll get the page on the highway allocation, so people can turn to it and see that the highway budget is what was requested, just the funding sources. It's kind of like
But it makes it look like they're not on board with us, is my real point. Are they on board with those numbers? If they are, then that's their new requested.
I kind of
That's
like
true.
showing what, I kind of like showing the maintenance of effort to
But
the
they're
town.
gonna,
Right. But they
Yes.
don't need it
they're
out
gonna
of,
get their requested budget, it's just split between funding sources.
Right.
So he's requesting $50,000 for this.
Yes.
But the recommended is 0, but he's still gonna get 50,000.
oh, I know, I understand that. But I'm
Will
just
Larry-
saying, it looks like we're
Will
arguing.
Larry be at the meeting?
Is what I'm saying.
So if Larry stands at the meeting and states, well, we're gonna do things like this and I'm in favor of it, then you'd have no pushback.
Yeah, I don't think this is a problem.
Right. It's just a semantic thing, but
Yeah.
it sounds to me like he's really requesting it now, and
Well,
it could be put on there as the
yeah.
requested.
And it's kind of a similar situation to what we ran into last year. So if it gets answered beforehand, then it doesn't look confusing.
Okay.
So I would think we could adjourn to next Monday at 5.
Do we have anything to say about legal contingency and reserve fund? It's on the,
Yeah, it's on the agenda in case anybody wants to discuss it. I think we'll be okay.
okay.
I mean, it's,
Any other town meeting matters?
No,
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
So moved.
roll call vote.
Aye, Don Maggie. Oh, we didn't have a second. Second.
I, Patricia Lemon.
Aye, Nick Archiva.
Okay, now who seconded?
Patricia,
No, she
She
made
moved
it.
it.
I
Dawn
seconded it.
seconded.
I
she
seconded.
seconded it.
Okay, Dawn.
I heard you.
Just write her name down, forget it.
Okay, see you later, guys.
Bye,
Thank you,
Patricia.
Patricia.